The course of events of today's manhwa begins in an unremarkable school and an equally unremarkable city. The weather is clear and sunny outside. A couple of moments later, the course of events is transferred to a school establishment very nearby. We watch as one of the students calmly plays League of Legends in class. Even though this ordinary schoolboy is in the classroom, this does not bother him at all, and he continues to play League of Legends on his phone. But this boy's game is interrupted after an evil girl approaches his desk and sharply hits his hand right in front of him to attract his attention. After the frame rises a little higher, we watch a beautiful waifu with long gray hair who notifies the guy that he did not turn in his homework, and she must collect it. Due to the fact that our main character was distracted from a very important game, unfortunately his stronghold was broken by the enemy opponent, and he was forced to lose this match. The main character, saddened by his defeat, addressing the girl as a beauty, asked her to simply not pay attention to him, and he would hand in the task someday later. But this girl is clearly not satisfied with the answer of our main character. She shouts that he never does his homework, and probably this time everything will not change in any way and will repeat itself. A couple of moments after this, we see three guys approaching the center of events, led by the main nerd of the class, who tells the girl not to waste her time on this loser. Coming closer to our main character, this main bore of the class continues to tell the girl that she shouldn't dirty the walls with this dirt. At this time, he looks at our main character. But our main character, judging by his reaction, is not at all some kind of loser who will simply endure insults. Instead, he looks at this bore and asks him again what he said. Next, these hooligans approach this girl and try to take some kind of roll of paper from her hands. They tell her that she already does a lot, so they ask her to let her help. However, this girl does not intend to contact these losers. She shouts that she does not know them, so they should address her respectfully by calling her by name. A couple of moments later, our main character intervenes in this mess and, approaching this maximum bore, stands in front of him and asks if he is called Mr. Goo. Immediately after our main character's question, he takes out his red iPhone and, showing some combination of emoticons, asks if he has ever seen such an expression. But after our main character shows this strange bunch of emojis, everyone around him doesn't understand why this dude did this. They ask him what he even means. But after a couple of moments, the main bore of the class is still told by one of his friends, whispering in his ear, that our main character just called him an ass. After that, the waifu who recently approached the guy understood why our main character did this. She appreciates the good old joke about the ass, because these are school years. This student is simply furious and shocked that our main character allowed himself to call out his personality so publicly, pointing his fist at the guy. He asks if he wants to die. This beaver was clearly not joking because immediately after his threat, he rushes at the guy sitting in his place in order to introduce him to his fist. The guy becomes wary. But our main character still has more skills and combat intelligence, so he hides his head under his clothes like a turtle, thereby avoiding this furious blow. Immediately after this, our protagonist gets up from his seat to counterattack with a kick right to the face of this boar. The execution is simply beautiful. Considering that they are all school children, this seemingly not very serious blow causes impressive damage to this beaver, which is why he falls to the ground and asks how he dared to hit him. After the guy realizes that he has just been hit, he orders his two friends to immediately beat our main character to death in front of everyone. Despite the surprised reaction of the girl with whom it all started, our main character is not at all afraid of the threat of being killed by two hooligans. On the contrary, he takes a fighting stance. But after a couple of moments, thanks to the bell that tells us that the next lesson is starting, we remember that the course of events is taking place at school, and they need to postpone their fight. That is why this crowd of hooligans, led by this typical boar, backs off. Holding his face with his hand, which received damage, he promises the guy that he will deal with him later. But despite the next threat, our main character doesn't care at all. He puts his feet on the table and understands that this crowd of hooligans is just another piece of trash not worth attention. Then, judging by the change of events, an ordinary day passes for a schoolboy with whom nothing happens, which is why we observe the acceleration of events, but at night itself, we move home. A couple of moments later, we are transported to the small room of our main character. We see scattered clothes on the floor and all sorts of snacks on the table near the main character's bed. Meanwhile, our main character, lying under the blanket and looking at the phone screen, understands that waifu from his class named Chu Ji-yan is really good. She is not only beautiful, but also smart. But after a couple of moments, our main character's internet surfing is interrupted by a push notification that informs our main character that the Taobao store of the Three Kingdoms is launching. Our main character is confused. He doesn't understand what kind of damn store of the Three Kingdoms Taobao we are talking about. He doesn't understand what kind of application this is so strange. After a couple of moments, a notification appears on our main character's screen that, due to a large discount on the fateful Moon King talisman, its price is 499 soul stones. The guy continues to read that a new product from the best high school student will be put up for sale next week, and perfume magic is allowed. The guy continues to scroll through. After a couple of moments, after scrolling a little more, our main character stumbles upon a strange window on which a wheel of fortune is depicted. And at the top it is written that newcomers have 3 attempts to win. After our main character sees the opportunity to get something for free, and after 3 attempts, interest lights up in his eyes, he understands that he definitely needs to try. A couple of moments after the logical chain is built in the head of our main character, he realizes that everything is correct, and immediately after that he presses the wheel. After the guy presses the wheels to scroll once, his screen brightens by 1000%, something we're all familiar with when we pick up our phone at night. But this time it was really much more powerful than the brightness of a regular phone, because the light from our protagonist's phone was enough to fill his entire room. After our main character comes to his senses after this flashbang from CS2, he realizes that he just thought something jumped out of his phone. As soon as our main character raised his eyes to make sure that it seemed to him or not, he sees a strange one-eyed purple creature with a seal on his eye. The guy is simply shocked because he has never seen anything like this in his life, which is why he started trying to protect himself with a blanket. He assumed that it was a ghost. A couple of moments after the guy used the famous defensive technique of wrapping himself in a blanket, he hoped that he was completely safe and nothing would happen to him. However, this creature that suddenly appeared in our main character's room did not intend to leave. Instead, it continued to hang in the air and watch what was happening. It took so long that our main character decided to look out from his defenses to make sure that this weirdo was still here. He concluded that it was not a ghost. After a couple of moments, our main character removed the blanket from himself and, having calmed down, once again looked at this very strange creature of unknown origin. It stood AFK. The notice informs our protagonist that in front of him is a religious celestial talisman, a valuable item that can decorate anything in the world if he can imagine it. But there is also an important note that, due to some restrictions, the talisman can only steal what is on the ground. The guy reached out to this weirdo, taking it in his hand. A couple of moments after this, our main character's opinion about this thing changed greatly, after he realized what it was and why he thought it was very cool. The course of events breaks off and continues when the next day comes, and our main character again needs to drag himself to school. The weather is as clear as yesterday. Next, we watch our main character who, having already gotten ready and dressed, left his house to go to school. Judging by his appearance, he did not manage to get enough sleep. While the guy continues to head to school, he has breakfast on the way. He really wants to sleep because of the unexpectedly appeared eccentric last night. He could not sleep because he was scared. After a couple of moments, we watch our main character stop, because he is already very close to the school where he studies and it's time to go inside. The course of events moves to an ordinary school but deserted corridor, at the end of which we can see some mysterious silhouette of a girl with long hair. After a couple of moments, we understand that the same girl at the end of the corridor is the one our main character likes. While studying some subject, she wonders why the harp has so many strings. Immediately after this scene, we observe our main character, who is already inside the school. Despite the fact that he is already inside, he continues to eat his bun. Our main character is so carried away by something that he does not notice at all, that very close to him is the same boar who threatened him yesterday, that he would easily deal with him. After they make eye contact, this boar points his finger at the guy and shouts at him that his bun stinks terribly, and in general he doesn't understand how he eats such disgusting stuff. Our main character is a real gigachad. Because he begins to defend his food for insults, he shouts back to the boar whether he has never tried soybeans and sausage rolls. In response to this terribly ugly schoolboy tells the guy that he is just a hillbilly. Because he eats black mushrooms and foie gras every morning, he asks the guy if he admires him. Our main character manages to deftly parry by asking the boar if he eats so many entrails to become stupid, because the liver is responsible for removing toxins, so you need to be careful. The same girl with long gray hair who was passing by these two at that moment heard another joke from our main character and smiled. She thought he was funny. At this point, the course of events moves and we move to a class in which a lesson is already being held. The teacher draws something on the board and tells the students to quickly open their books. Next, this boring teacher tells the class that today they will study the Southern River. In this work, there are several important points that may appear on the final exam. The teacher continues her story by saying that poetry is a real treasure of literature, the quintessence of language and the pearl of wisdom. She asks the class if they like writing poetry. But hearing that no one is answering her and is not even going to, she adjusts her glasses just like in Cool Moments and asks this question to the head of this class. The headman gets up from her seat to answer and, embarrassed, replies that she has never written poetry. Although she likes writing poetry, it is truly a very difficult task. After the teacher heard the answer of this prefect, she informs her that she understood her answer, and continuing to adjust her glasses, informs the student that she can sit back down. As soon as this teacher looks around the class, she understands that absolutely no one is interested in this boring lesson. But our main character, sitting on the last desk, deserves special attention. After a couple of moments using the critical thinking of Sherlock Holmes, this mushroom-haired teacher comes up with a brilliant idea and reaches for the chalkboard sponge. As soon as this teacher takes this sponge in her hands, she immediately throws it at our main character. Performing a real headshot, she shouts to a guy named Yi Xiaofeng to stand up immediately. The teacher continues her attack by approaching the guy and saying that all he does is sleep. She asks him if he knows anything other than sleep. She asks what she was talking about. After they tried to take our main character by surprise, everyone turned to look at Xiaofeng, simultaneously calling him a fucking outcast and a loser. But our main character absolutely does not care about everything that happens around him, continuing to recover from sleep. He reports that the work in question is a stupid verse and not a masterpiece. Hearing this, the teacher becomes furious. She shouts that South River has received 5 different literary awards. Hudong is one of the most famous writers of that time, and this is a masterpiece. The teacher continues to put pressure on the guy, telling him that he already has few points in literature, and he also dares to say that the poem is stupid, so she decides to check his poem. But after a couple of moments, this annoying boar with teeth like a beaver interrupts the teacher, diverting her attention from our main character to himself. She turns to him. Raising his hand, this boar continues to tell the teacher not to pay attention to this loser. Instead, he suggests that she let him try to answer. This teacher, judging by her reaction, really likes this extremely disgusting boy who, with all his appearance, is trying to create a good impression in front of the teacher. Judging by the face of our main character, he already had the next ingenious answer ready, but because of this annoying loser, he again failed. To relieve stress, he expertly turns the handle. The guy tells a verse that sounds like a white horse fell into the abyss of the sea tide. The venerable traveler discovered a new land, a world full of the unknown, where blades rushed upward. Judging by the taste of this class, they are simply terribly fanatical about bad taste, because after this beaver finishes his verse, everyone begins to applaud him as if he had told something worthwhile. Our main character intends to show everyone the difference between himself and this loser, which is why the guy criticizes the boar's tasteless poem, telling him that he will now show him how to do it. Our protagonist's classmates immediately start laughing, asking him if he slept so much that he went crazy, because he doesn't have any literary knowledge to understand the poem. Meanwhile, our main character, putting his hand under his desk, took out his very artifact that he received last night from the magical Taobao. He asked him to give him a poem. As soon as our main character voiced his request to this strange thing, after a couple of moments it immediately brought out in front of his eyes the poem that he asked for a second ago. However, it didn't end there. This very strange artifact continued to swell more and more, absorbing more and more information. It was already like an airship in size. After this mysterious artifact reached a certain size, it dissipated, and judging by the face of our main character, something changed significantly. Everything around was in some kind of effect. A couple of moments after his new artifact copes with absorbing all this information that the artifact gave him, he began to talk as expressively as Sigma. As soon as our main character continued to recite his poem, an incredibly unusual atmosphere hung in the class, which was conveyed surprisingly clearly. Everyone in the class was in shock. Meanwhile, our main character continued to amazingly recite the poem. The atmosphere of the story changed, but the incredible atmosphere around from the guy's words continued to remain. The classmates of our main character, who a couple of minutes ago did not believe in his skills, were fascinated by the story of our main character. They even thought of the sea of roses that was told about. Meanwhile, the guy was coming closer and closer to the apogee of his poetic mastery. He was incredibly expressive, and the poem was amazing, which could not be evaluated. The poem ended simply amazingly delightfully. The guy ended with the line that he devotes himself entirely to this world. After this phrase, everyone in the class seemed to start flying. After our main character's story ends, the literature teacher of this class stands in shock. She does not understand what just happened, and most importantly, how it happened. Meanwhile, our main character continued his attacks with words saying that he doesn't want to think about the future. He wants to love life, and that's all he wants in his current life. After our main character says this phrase, there is silence in the class, and it is unclear whether they are silent because they cannot believe their hearing or they did not understand his phrase. But looking at the head of this class, or just a pretty waifu that our main character likes, we understand that the guy managed to really impress her with his story. Meanwhile, a loud bell rings, which tells us that the current literature lesson is coming to an end and the students have free time during the break. The reaction of the main bore of this class was not long in coming. He immediately pointed at the guy, saying that he was a cheater, and he was sure that he copied it, and if he didn't, he would eat his shit. While the literature teacher is looking for this poem, our main character tells the beaver who accused him to keep his word, because now the teacher will tell whether he copied it or not. After a couple of moments, the teacher who was looking for the poem, told by our main character, fell silent. She couldn't believe that this poem really wasn't on the internet. After the guy heard that his work was not on the internet, he began to collect his things and, looking towards this loser, said that he would patiently wait for his performance. A couple of moments later, our main character left his class and, stopping before the exit, told this beaver to be sure to call him when he begins his part of the agreement. Meanwhile, our main character, finding himself on the street, looked at his phone and realized that the Three Kingdoms Taobao store was really interesting. He needed to check it out some other time. Immediately after this, our main character takes out his red iPhone and, entering the application, immediately goes to the picture wheel section and begins to spin his second attempt. Our main character's phone, exactly the same as the first time when he scrolled this wheel, begins to glow very powerfully. The guy looking at this is very surprised. Once again, the brightness of his phone is so high that he cannot even look at it to see what reward he received this time, because the light is blinding him. A few moments later, we see a notification on the screen, congratulating the guy for winning a golden treasure. The exchange rate of one golden treasure is 1 million yuan. After a schoolboy looks at the screen of his phone and realizes that he has just received 1 million yuan, he begins to rejoice because now he is rich. Meanwhile, 3 hitmen appear behind him. A couple of moments after we saw 3 bald, important dudes behind the guy, we watch as one of them put his hand on the shoulder of our main character standing behind him. As soon as our main character turned around, he saw something that an ordinary schoolboy would not want to see. 3 hitmen from the game of the same name who asked him if he was Yi Xiaofeng. After our rather not stupid main character realized that the matter smelled of kerosene, he immediately answered the men that they had taken the wrong guy, and he was not the one they took him for. Immediately after the guy realized that he needed to get out, he pointed his finger somewhere to the side and said that the house of the guy they were looking for was somewhere there, and they should look there. After our main character had at least some opportunity to escape, he immediately rushed from his place in order to escape from these suspicious men. But due to the fact that the guy running away did not look back, he did not notice that there was another man waiting in front of him who blocked his path to retreat. He did not expect this at all. After the guy looked back to see who was blocking his path, he saw some strange punk with guards standing around him. He asked them why they were even here. Immediately after the guy asked this behind this crowd of men, this beaver is a classmate of the guy who was surprised that our main character ran away from the class so quickly. Wary but continuing to be cool, the guy told Peter that he didn't understand him. He asked him whether he stopped him in order to show him what he promised him or not. In response to this, some punk with a mohawk answered instead of a beaver. He told the schoolboy to stop being sarcastic. He told him to stop being arrogant and just apologize to him. One of the guards from the crowd continues to say that he will not hit him so hard if the guy will tone down his sarcasm and right now quickly get down on his knees and admit his mistake. Finding himself in such a most unfavorable situation, the guy put his hand on his head and was shocked that Bai Yu stopped him. His own people from his own class want to kill him. After a couple of moments, our main character finally bowed to the annoying boar and said that he had had enough and asked for forgiveness. He continued to repeat this 2 more times. But as soon as this loser relaxed for even 1 second, our main character instantly closed the distance to this loser in order to feed him a blow to the face. The blow from this seemingly ordinary schoolboy was so strong that it forced the boy to fall onto the asphalt once again. The guy again beat him with his own efforts. Continuing to stand confidently, the guy stated that he apologized as sincerely as possible. Standing in a cool pose over the defeated loser, he asked him if he felt it enough. The guy who was doing the SpongeBob cosplay got up and asked the guards whom he had ordered why the hell they were just standing there instead of hitting the guy who had just punched him in the face. As soon as this beaver asked this question, a huge bald guard stood behind our main character and then grabbed him with both hands, thereby limiting his movement. Immediately after our main character was caught by surprise by an adult man, he had no choice but to take a powerful blow to the stomach because he could not do anything. A couple of moments later, our main character, who could not resist in any way, was dealt another blow, but this time the blow was a steel bat directly in the stomach. The punk, standing in front of our main character with a steel bat, looked at him and said that he was not so bad, but at the same time he still called him a simple little freak. A couple of moments later, the head of the class in which these two studied joined the course of events. She was surprised to approach the crowd that was attracting attention and saw that the guy was being mercilessly beaten. But in the meantime, a punk with a strange mohawk was swinging his bat hard in order to deliver a crushing blow with a steel bat right to the head of our main character. This would be a real fatality. But then the same head girl, an excellent student of this class, intervenes and runs towards this crowd, and running up to them, shouts for them to stop immediately and not touch our main character. After this girl with long gray hair rushes to stop this beating, she herself gets hit, thereby accidentally protecting our main character. The sight that is currently in front of the guy's eyes is not the best. He watches as the girl he likes slowly falls to the ground from a blow to the head with a bat. After the class president, who received a powerful blow to the head with a steel bat, falls to the ground, a very loud scream of a guy is heard who shouts her name at the top of his lungs, a frightening sight. Our main character is seized with terrible anger, because the girl had nothing to do with it, but she got it for absolutely nothing. He shouts to this crowd that they are bastards. His face is twisted with anger. Due to the emotional shock, our main character has enough strength to get out of the hold of a healthy man. He easily frees him, shouting to this bald man to let him go. But this psycho is not going to stop. Overcome with emotion, after he gets out of the guard's grip, he swings his hand to hit the lying bald man. A couple of moments after this, the guy makes a powerful blow to the lying guard who is holding him. The blow is so powerful that dust rises from the blow. The beaver watches behind in surprise. After the guy deals with the guard who is holding him, he slowly turns around, looking through the eyes of a hunter, at the very one because of whom all this happened. He is ready to beat the crap out of him. While this weirdo who doesn't understand why our main character is looking at him like that, who is rapidly approaching, this crazy person is ready to tear this idiot apart because of what happened. Having sufficiently shortened the distance to this beaver, our main character makes, albeit a sneaky but most effective kick, right into the vulnerable area of any guy or man. The reaction of this loser is not long in coming, because immediately after the blow, the grimace begins to grimace terribly in pain, because this blow was filled with force due to aggression. While this idiot's guards are frantically running to their master to check his condition, the guy picks up the headman from the floor to find out what's wrong with her. But the guy is not going to hesitate and show indecision, which is why immediately after he takes her in his arms, he begins to run with her so that she can immediately receive medical assistance. While the guy continues to leave with the girl in his arms in order to do everything possible to save her, this idiot shouts after him, calling the name of Yi Xiaofeng, that it's not the end yet. Despite the cries of this idiot that next time he will kill our main character, the guy continues to carry this girl so that she can be helped immediately. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and time accelerates until the evening of the same day. Meanwhile, the course of events is transferred to the hospital where the guy brought the girl. Immediately after this, we are instantly transported to the ward in which this girl is located. He is lying in his bed with his head bandaged. She is in very bad condition. In her room, there is a man with gray hair dressed in a serious suit. At this time, he has turned his back to the girl and is looking out the window of this hospital. Moving into the corridor of this hospital, we see our main character sitting in a school uniform and waiting for at least some news about the health of this girl, since she was brought in. Nothing has been heard. A couple of moments later, we watch as the guy's teacher yells at him, informing him that they have decided to expel him from school for his misdeeds that he has committed. The guy is simply in shock. He doesn't understand why they are trying to expel him. He shouts and asks why he is being expelled, and on what basis they even made it happen. He tries to tell what happened. Next, a man with short black hair appears on our screen. Chairman Zhu is in front of us, pointing his finger at the guy. He says that the decision has been made, because based on the results of the audit, he started it all. After a couple of moments, the frame moves to two terribly similar boars who, standing to the side, smile sarcastically after they hear that the guy is accused in full. In response to all these accusations that our main character receives, he only furiously clenches his fist, so hard that the veins on his fist pop out from the force of the compression. The guy standing in front of this bunch of idiots collects all his testosterone reserves in order to put them all in their place. He begins his sentence with the fact that all of them, but our main character does not have time to finish his rather promising phrase because he is interrupted by the one who opens the door to this room from the girl's room. He asks if this is true. Before us is a man from a corporation called Shanghai named Chu Shai Han. He states that the verdict and charges against the guy are different from the result of their investigation. Looking at the real culprit who made all this happen, the man continues to say that it is obvious that Gu Tianwu was the first to start a quarrel with the guy, and then he injured his daughter. Then the father of the injured girl, turning to the chairman, asks him for what reason and by what right did they change the entire outcome of the investigation. In response to this, the man has nothing to answer. A couple of moments after the Sigma father of the injured girl presses them all on the facts, the chairman and teacher of these boys begin to apologize, and the representative says that they really need to check everything. But immediately after this, apparently the boar's father declares that the children got into a fight and, by chance, their daughter was injured. He asks the man not to worry because he will bear the expenses. However, this man briefly answers that he is not interested in this. He says that there is no need for this because his family already has enough money and it's not about money at all. The victim's father continues that if any problems arise with his daughter, he will do everything possible to make it dangerous for their family to be in this city. Hearing the deadly seriousness that sounds in the voice of the father of the injured headman, the chairman and the teacher are wary, realizing that it is better not to joke with this man. Looking at this family of pathetic losers beavers, this man continues that their thriving company that they own is also no exception, because he can cause them problems. After a couple of moments, this loser son of a beaver decides to burst into the conversation and asks the man, pointing his finger at him, what the hell he's talking about. He feels like he's in the edit. But after a couple of moments, this idiot's mouth is covered with his father's hand, and his incomprehensible and ridiculous words turn into unintelligible babble. His own father standing next to him closes his mouth. After a couple of moments, this loser takes his loser son away, covering his mouth, and finally he tells the man that he understood everything, so he won't bother them anymore. After this company of beavers consisting of father and son begin to leave the hospital, followed by the chairman and teacher from the school. The guy watches their departure. A couple of moments after this bunch of idiots leave and our main character is left alone with the victim's father, he looks at him and, thanks to him, tries to explain something. However, the father of this girl interrupts our main character, telling him not to take it into his head because he helped his daughter, so he is not going to harm him. The guy objects. The guy's objection is that this father's daughter has still not come to her senses and is lying unconscious in her room. At this time, the guy looks inside and looks worriedly inside. Suddenly, an unexpected idea comes to our main character's head like thunder. He clearly remembered something that could help him in this situation. He was visited by some kind of insight. Immediately after something comes to the schoolboy's mind, he runs away telling the headman's father to wait for him because he will definitely find a way to help his daughter. He will do it. A couple of moments after this, the course of events ends and the time is still night, and the course of action is transferred to a location already familiar to us, the house of our main character. Sitting down on his bed, our main character immediately took out his phone to find out if his magical Tao Bao contained any medicine for people that could help. A couple of seconds after this, we, or more precisely our main character, are visited by the already familiar magical glow from the phone. The voice from the phone tells the guy that he is worried and asks what he wants. A couple of moments after this, a certain lady comes out of the screen of our main character and asks our main character directly what he wants to find in the vastness of the application. Our main character again has an adequate reaction. Like any other person in his situation, he throws his phone away because he again thought it was a ghost. But after a couple of moments, the phone of our main character with this girl returns to the guy. The girl asks him if he is afraid of ghosts, and she is a fairy, and not a ghost at all. The guy asks this mysterious creature in surprise what it is. This girl, smiling sweetly, replies that her name is Ling Er. She again asks the guy what he is looking for. The schoolboy was not at a loss and asked the girl in front of him to help him find medicine to save people, which he needs and is very important now more than ever. After a couple of moments, this magical white fairy in a white robe snaps her fingers and tells the guy that right now she will do a search and see if she can find something. Immediately after this, a wide list of various medicines of various types appears in front of the guy, and they all have their own price. The currency in this program is soul stones. Looking at these huge prices, the guy is very surprised and tells the fairy that he does not have such huge money to buy at least one medicine from this list. Next, the guy is still trying to come up with something in order to get the medicine. He tells the fairy that he has 2 magical treasures and 200,000 fallen flowers. He asks her to look at it. But judging by the reaction of this fairy with long white hair and drooping ears, she is either completely uninterested in what our main character offered her, or this is not what she needs at all. Then this girl still breaks the silence by putting her hand on her face and telling the guy that he is very poor, because 200,000 fallen flowers are just 20 pathetic soul stones. Despite the fact that our main character's mood deteriorates greatly, He still continues his search because this is very important in order to save the life of a girl who now needs healing. After a couple of moments, this good-natured fairy still comes into the position of our main character and provides him with at least some option that he can afford with his means. Immediately after this, a window appears in front of our main character, which shows him a devilish medicine that can cure all diseases and costs only 20 soul stones. It is also easy to use. After this fairy in a white robe finds this item, she folds her hands in front of her contentedly and tells the guy in front of her that she can obviously make this deal. Looking at this item, the guy says that it's just wonderful. He thanks this fairy for her help, because this is exactly what he needed to save the girl who suffered undeservedly. At this point, the course of events ends. The next day comes and we continue when we are transported to the location of the hospital in which that same classmate of our main character is located. After we are transported inside this hospital, or more precisely to the reception desk, we watch a guy who runs headlong into the room in which the one for whom he made a deal is located. After a couple of moments, the guy runs away and finds himself on the right floor, running into the right corridor. He begins to look around and paste over Mr. Chu or just the girl's father. The search for our main character is quickly interrupted after two men in a tuxedo stand in front of him and block his path. They ask the guy what he is doing. These two continue to chase the guy standing in front of him, asking him who he is, where he is from, and why he burst into this floor so unexpectedly and makes so much noise around. Approaching one of the guards, the guy asks one of them not to stop him, because he came in order to provide the promised help to the lady they are guarding right now. However, our main character is very abruptly interrupted by a voice that comes from the side, interrupting the conversation between the guy and the security guard. This voice asks the guy what kind of nonsense he is talking about. The owner of this voice who intervened in the conversation is a doctor with a very noticeable bald head who asks the kid how he dares to even allow himself to open his mouth and talk about such things. After a couple of moments, the guy continues to try to break through the security, telling Mr. Doctor to trust him because he can save this girl, but the doctor, calling the guy trash, says that he is nothing. The guy begins to be taken away from the place where this girl is, but he continues to try to get to the girl in order to use what he bought last night, but everyone continues to ignore him. Our main character, using critical thinking, understands that the situation is bad, because if he does not cure Ji-Yan as quickly as possible, she may not withstand the torture of time, so he needs to come up with something. Next, the guy, looking at the doctor, tells him that he suffered from insomnia 2 months ago, because of which he took sleeping pills, and also he goes to the toilet many times a day. He experiences pain in the toilet. Pointing his finger at the doctor with a bald head, the guy continues to say that the worst of all are the symptoms of a neurotic syndrome. He needs to start treatment as soon as possible before it's too late for him. Hearing this, the doctor stops because he cannot believe what he heard from this little idiot, because everything he said is true. But how is this possible? He is just a schoolboy. While the guy continues to not be allowed inside, he continues to shout to the doctor about his neurotic syndrome. He also provokes him by asking what he is waiting for, stopping in his tracks. But after a couple of moments, the patience of the doctor with neurotic syndrome ends and, raising his fist, he orders the guards to throw him out of this corridor as quickly as possible. But suddenly some crazy old man with a long beard intervenes in the conversation and asks this entire crowd to stop and do nothing. Apparently he is the local authority of the hospital. Next, this old man stops and looks at our main character and tells him that he really was able to see all the symptoms of this doctor. He just looked at him without any diagnostics. The guy immediately understands that this old man is his chance to get to the girl, so he runs up to him and says that everything is exactly as he said. The old man smiles and is surprised in response to this. Meanwhile, the guards who kicked out our main character a couple of moments ago look at each other and joke about the neurotic syndrome of the doctor, who is responsible for treating the victim. A doctor with a neurotic syndrome and problems with urination again intervenes in the conversation. Pointing his finger at the guy, he shouts at them not to be stupid because the guy is just talking nonsense. But the wise old man retorts to this by saying that he has been practicing medicine for more than half of his life. He asks him, in his opinion, whether he would be able to distinguish this in this case. After this short old man, a medical master, treats this bald doctor with a neurotic syndrome, he takes our main character into the room he needed. As soon as these two entered this room in which that same waifu with gray hair was located, our main character immediately looked in his direction and addressed him by name in a respectful tone. But this man does not intend to ask unnecessary questions and waste time on empty chatter, so he looks at our main character and immediately asks him why he came. The guy immediately answers the man that he promised him that he found a way to save his daughter, so he, continuing to convince, asks the gentleman to trust him right now. Judging by the face of the victim's father, he clearly does not believe in the abilities of an ordinary schoolboy. But a sage in the field of medicine tells him not to worry because this boy is very capable in this field. Having received the go-ahead, if you can call it that, our main character slowly approaches the head of his class whom he likes. After he gets close enough to the bed, he stops. A couple of moments after he looks his classmate up and down, for some strange reason he begins to lift his sleeves one by one. Immediately after the guy lifts both his sleeves, he touches the girl's pulse with 2 fingers and immediately brings up the menu of his amazing application to select. After the guy understands the management of this menu, which he calls up for the first time in relation to someone, judging by his look, he is going to begin the healing procedure. Immediately after the guy uses the healing item he bought, which was suspiciously cheap, huge, powerful green rays begin to emanate from his eyes. Literally a couple of seconds after the item the guy bought starts working, and his eyes are filled with some kind of energy, he looks at the girl's body and sees various chi channels. Bringing his hand to the mouth of this unconscious girl, the guy concludes that her tongue is cold, but at the same time she has a fever, and besides, her vascular system is damaged, which is very bad. But after a couple of movements of our protagonist, which were made with the help of an item that he bought last night, he realizes that her pulse is quickening, and she will soon wake up, he reports this. It seems to the father that this guy is either joking or talking nonsense. He instantly gets up from his seat because he simply cannot believe his hearing, because his daughter could not return to consciousness for days. Meanwhile, a neurotic doctor with a huge shiny bald head standing in the corner watching this whole situation, as always, says something negative, calling this situation very strange. After a couple of moments, a sage in the field of medicine who is sitting and drinking his green tea says that the guy is right about everything. Then he asks the guy what else he found out through the analysis. The schoolboy continues to surprise everyone by saying that the external aorta beats more often than the internal one, and its pulse jumps, so you need to catch the stimulation point in order to awaken it. After a couple of seconds, our main character continues to conclude that if he manages to find the right point and stimulate it, then the hematoma should go away on its own and everything will return to normal. Meanwhile, even the sage professor, who has been practicing medicine for a huge number of years, has questions. He asks our main character what stimulation point we are talking about. The guy, continuing to look as serious as possible, answers the sage that this point is definitely located in the largest vein and he needs to take measures to save her life. Meanwhile, the neurotic doctor standing in the corner begins to clap, but he does this with sarcasm. He continues saying that he said everything well. But alas, all this makes no sense. This idiot with a neurotic syndrome continues to bother everyone. This time he tells the guy that if he really wants to do it, then he thinks that he won't be able to anyway. Approaching our main character, the doctor shouts in his face that treating patients is the doctor's concern, and he is just a kid who picked up knowledge at home, so he sends him home. After a couple of moments, the sage, who continues to sit on the chair, maintaining maximum calm and scratching his beard, says to tell him to shut his mouth right now. This neurotic doctor thinks that this old man meant to shut up our main character. The neurotic tells the guy that even Dr. Wei asked him to shut up, and that says a lot. However, the old professor, the sage, corrects this slow-witted one by saying that this was addressed to him, and not to a talented guy who at his age knows much more than a neurotic doctor. After a couple of moments, one of the guards puts his hand, but this time not on the schoolboy, but on this neurotic doctor who, turning around in surprise, does not understand what the hell is happening. While these 2 guards continue to take this weak doctor away, even in this situation he manages to say that this little kid is just trying to fool everyone, and they will convince him. A couple of moments after this loser doctor finds himself outside the door, not even a second passes before he starts banging on the door demanding that he be let back in immediately. Meanwhile, our main character, who as a schoolboy is much more adequate than a professional doctor, asks the sage if he has acupuncture needles. These are needles for traditional acupuncture. The old man, without thinking for a long time, reaches into the pocket of his robe and after a couple of moments hands our main character a whole set, which is in a small package of what he needs. While the guy takes this package from the sage's hands and begins to unwrap it in order to get to the needles he needs, the sage does not hesitate to ask the guy what he is doing right now. Meanwhile, a skillful guy taking out 1 haze from the entire set tells the master instead of asking questions, just see once, after which all his questions will find answers themselves. After a couple of moments, our main character turns on the acupuncture god mode, because what he did right now goes beyond the realm of reality, because he drew some kind of strip of ice with the help of needles. Watching this strange technique, the old man, who, I repeat, spent half his life on medicine, stands with his mouth open because he cannot believe his eyes, because this is an ice-cold acupuncture needle. Meanwhile, we watch as our main character, in one movement, albeit a very strange one, plunged 4 needles into the girl's head at once, which were simply in an ideal position. After a couple of moments, our main character took out some kind of rag and began to gently wipe away the drops of sweat that began to pour down this girl's body. He did everything as carefully as possible. Meanwhile, the guy continued to show everyone watching the amazing skill of medicine at an incredibly young age for him. He realized that he had almost completed the healing procedure. A couple of moments after our main character placed all the needles at the right points where the channels of internal energy flow, the needles began to freeze, turning the areas into ice. After the traditional acupuncture performed by our protagonist had already borne fruit, he began to slowly pull out needle after needle to complete the procedure. As soon as the guy took out all the ice needles that he had recently placed at different points on this girl's body, layers of ice immediately fell off her body and fell straight to the floor. After the procedure performed by our protagonist was completely completed, he removed the games and lowered his sleeves back, placing the girl back in the position in which she was. A couple of minutes after our main character completes the traditional acupuncture procedure, a sage and his father approach the victim. The gentleman asks what just happened, but no one answers him because the answer suggests itself. After just a moment, the facial expressions on the girl's face begin to awaken, and she finally begins to show signs of life. Literally after a few seconds after the first signs of life, this girl suddenly gets up from a lying position and begins to cough up large clots of blood. But nevertheless, she woke up. The father and everyone else standing around the bed, not counting our main character, cannot believe their eyes. Just before their eyes, a real miracle happened in which few people believed. But despite the fact that Ji-Yan finally awakened, despite the fact that she could not return to consciousness for a very long time, her father's hands quickly reached out in the direction of our protagonist. At the last moment, the guy decided to turn around because his spider sense told him that something was wrong. Turning around, he saw her father's huge hand that was rapidly approaching him. Immediately after his hands reached our main character, this man took the guy by the clothes and began yelling at him, asking what he just did to his daughter. Apparently, he was afraid of blood. Meanwhile, Ji-Yan, who suddenly woke up, was wondering what she wanted to do and what even happened to her, because she doesn't remember anything after she wanted to intervene. The father immediately got rid of our main character and rushed to his daughter. He immediately, being concerned, asked her how he was feeling. He added that Xiaofeng helped her come to her senses. Hearing this, the girl was very surprised because she did not expect to hear the name of our main character in such a context, which is why he asked his father for this information. Immediately after this, she looked at our main character, who broke into a smile and asked the girl if she was feeling well and if everything was okay with her. He was pleased. Meanwhile, a gray-haired, wise old man approached our main character and told him that his acupuncture technique was very unusual, which is why he wanted to ask who his teacher was. The guy realized that he needed to get out somehow. He replied that his teacher was traveling around the world. He was also hiding, so he couldn't just tell them the name of his teacher. A couple of moments later, we watched as the father of this girl continued to ask his daughter how she was feeling because he had not yet received an answer to this question. After the girl tried to answer her father's question, she was horrified because the only question she now asked was who she was. This made her truly horrified. A couple of moments after this, our main character, together with a sage who is very knowledgeable in medicine, for some reason decided to look out the window. It was very strange. It was unlikely that they were stuffy. Meanwhile, the guy stopped and wondered if it might be worth doing this right here. The guy realized that this was really the case, and he needed to take action. A couple of moments later, he bit through his finger with his teeth, not in order to turn into a titan, but in order to use the second section of devilish medicine, the line between heaven and water. After the guy began to use his second section of devilish medicine, a seal appeared in front of him which he began to paint, thereby using his technique. Immediately after this, the guy used the blood from his finger to pass it around his finger to use a technique called the celestial eye. Where did this all lead? After a couple of moments, the guy ran his fingers, from which blood was flowing, in order to break the seal that was in front of him. It was in this way that he was going to open the celestial eye. Immediately after the manipulations performed by our main character, a huge golden eye appeared near the ceiling of this chamber, which looked at our main character. This was the Eye of Heaven. Literally a couple of moments after the celestial eye began its action, thanks to it, we saw some very strange creature that was laughing very strangely senselessly. After this withered monster realized that he was now visible, he looked at the guy and said that it was extremely unexpected that the guy was really able to open the Eye of Heaven. This devil continued saying that he knew many Taoists. He continued asking our main character from whom he inherited this gift. The guy meanwhile realized that he had made a big mistake. After this monster received silence in response to the question, he continued telling the guy to just stay away from all this. He just wants to settle scores with the Chu family. Next, this monster activated its strange evil staff, which began to exude evil energy. The monster declared that within a week, it would take the life of the girl who had lost her memory. Immediately after this very strange monster sent some very strange black snakes with the help of his staff, which quickly approached this girl closer and closer. After these dark snakes overtook this girl, a terrible mark appeared on her hand. The monster explained that it marked her with filth so that she would not be able to escape from him in any way. A girl with long gray hair looking at her hand did not understand what was happening. Looking at her hand, she wondered if this was the evil that the monster was talking about. A couple of moments after this, the monster switched to our main character, saying that this time it will spare the guy, but if it sees him next time, he won't get off just like that. Immediately after this evil remark, a bunch more of these filth began to fly out of the staff of this monster. They came out of the window of this planet and spread throughout the hospital. Who knows what this will lead to? The guy continued to remain amazingly calm, despite the fact that before he was afraid of any manifestation of something mystical. Approaching the window, he thought about the fact that he only had 7 days. A couple of moments later, the father of the girl who will die in 7 days approached the guy. He put his hand on the guy's shoulder and asked him what the hell it all means and what it's all about. Our main character replied that this demonic creature harbors a long-standing grudge against their family. He asked the father of this girl why the Chu family offended this terrifying monster so much. The man simply couldn't believe his ears. When he heard our main character's explanation, he was very surprised and ended up answering that he didn't even know what to say about this because he didn't understand. The guy continued saying that this bloodthirsty orc will return for revenge, so they need to prepare. And he will try to find a way to deal with her, and they must find what the grudge against their family is. After a couple of moments, the conversation is interrupted by a door that suddenly opens. A certain person asks for forgiveness for interrupting, and asks if they would give her a minute of their time. In response to this, our main character and father of the Chu family turns in surprise towards the door to look at the fact that he decided to disturb them in such a very strange and hopeless way. Immediately after this, we observe a hospital employee with short hair who says that she knows how much they worry about the girl, but she does not advise taking rash actions. Then this girl asked where the hell this guy came from. She also asked who would take responsibility if something happened to her, and everything did not go according to his plan. In response to this, the old man, whose presence was clearly not noticed, began to think, and to think noisily to make it clear that he was here. He also straightened his beard. This girl who suddenly entered the room was very surprised after she saw Sage Wei. Apparently she did not expect to see him here at all, so she was surprised. Seeing Medicine Master Wei, this girl with short white hair immediately went up to the old man sitting on the sofa and told him that the girl woke up so quickly was amazing. Looking at the nightstand, she immediately realized that there were Dr. Wei's acupuncture needles on it, and when she saw them, her questions immediately disappeared as to why the girl came to her senses so quickly. However, the old man told this girl an amazing truth, hinting at our main character. He said that he does not have such skills, and her recovery is the merit of this boy. After a couple of moments, this girl immediately approached this guy and began to scan him from top to bottom. She was clearly interested in our main character in some way, otherwise her look cannot be explained. Pointing her finger at him and looking at the medical master Wei, she immediately asked if this guy was his student. The guy in response to this only sighed very demonstratively and rolled his eyes. A couple of moments after this, our main character, clutching his head and moving away from the nurse with white hair and Master Wei, realized that he needed to find a way to deal with the ogre that would return. Immediately after this, the head of the Chu family approached the guy and told the guy that he would do something to find out why the orc wanted to take revenge on his family. The guy heard this and became noticeably relieved. Leaving the ward, our main character told the Sage of Medicine that this girl who had come to her senses needed to be given some medicine that would help restore strength. The old man said that he would do this. Meanwhile, the course of events is interrupted and the passage of time accelerates, but this time not until night, but closer to midday. We are again transported to the apartment of our main character, in a place already familiar to us. Once in his apartment, the guy immediately moves towards his bed, after which he immediately lies down on it and, placing his phone nearby, begins to think about what he should do next. After a couple of moments, the guy remembers how this girl's father gave him a whole 1 billion on one card, asking him not to worry because he just wanted to thank him. The guy understood that they were too rich. But this orc has been living for 3,000 years, so only a supreme wizard who possesses the magic of the 3 elements can defeat her. The guy took out his phone, wondering if there was any other way. As soon as our main character picked up his phone, he suddenly heard a notification that for some reason congratulated him. The guy was very surprised, not understanding what was happening. The notice said that the guy received an expired celestial medicine. This is a first-class medicine that can create a healing zone in the head. But if used for a long time, the functions will be lost. Holding this rather small tablet in his hand and looking at it, our main character wondered whether he should use this medicine in order to create a healing zone using it. He didn't think for long, because after a couple of seconds we were watching his face chewing the medicine. Even if it was expired, he understood that this pill probably still had some properties. But as soon as our main character lived through this pill and then swallowed it, something strange happened that made our main character suddenly stop and freeze. Apparently, the guy felt so bad after swallowing this medicinal pill that he dropped the phone he was holding in his hands. As soon as the guy swallowed this medicine, it immediately began to act. The guy certainly felt the effect, but at first he simply stood in shock and could not describe this strange feeling he received. The guy still couldn't understand what kind of feeling he was feeling right now. He walked up to his desk, after which he pulled out the drawer and opened the book in front of him and discovered that it was glowing somehow strangely. Reading various lines from this book, the guy finally understood what the effect of this pill was, because by reading the letters he understood that they were developing much faster in his brain. In addition to the fact that he began to absorb information much more efficiently than before, his body was also immediately filled with energy, and his strength also increased significantly after taking this medicine. As soon as our main character put two fingers together just like Gojo from the magical battle, some strange blue force effect appeared. Looking out the window, a brilliant thought came to him. Our main character's thought was to go to the window and use the power he had just received to launch a powerful beam from his window to understand how strong he was. After you shot into the air, the guy saw the approximate level of power that he had just received. He was very surprised and realized that his new ability was certainly a very dangerous thing. A couple of moments later, our main character was struck by a brilliant idea, because after he acquired such destructive power, one might say by chance, he had a chance to defeat the ogre. Immediately after our main character set himself the goal of destroying Ogre, who is the third queen and the mother of all ogres, he realized that now having received power, he is going after her. A couple of seconds after our main character has set himself the goal of destroying the Ogre Queen, the course of events moves, as does the place, to the mansion in which the Chu family lives, a delightful place. Literally a moment later, we see our main character in front of us, who at this time is standing in front of the entrance to this mansion. He looks in surprise at the enormous scale of this mansion. After a couple of moments, our main character is not kept waiting long, and the door is finally opened for him, asking if he is a guy named Xiao Feng. The guy looks at something in surprise. Apparently, in front of us is one of the workers of this huge mansion of the Chu family. She tells the guy that Mr. Chu will soon join them, but for now, she will allow him to meet her. Our main character was quite happy with this option, after which the worker of this mansion began to lead our main character inside the mansion. She called Ji Yan while inside. A couple of moments later, we observed Ji Yan herself, who all this time was sitting peacefully on the sofa and was wounded by the appearance of Xiao Feng. She was in home clothes that were unusual for us and the guy. Meanwhile, our main character, having seen a girl whom he had liked for a long time, walked towards her on the sofa, placed on the table some kind of package that he had brought, and was ready to sit on the sofa. Next, the guy stood in front of the girl and asked her directly how she was feeling now, because in these last days she had had a very hard time and a bunch of new problems appeared. Ji Yan in a panda costume answered our main character that everything was fine, but she only had a slight headache. The guy took his hand and told her that she needed more time to recover. Meanwhile, Xiao Feng, freeing the box from the package, told the girl that he had brought her his family's secret medicine, which he was sure would help her neutralize all the toxins in her body. Having seen some kind of secret remedy for 7 of our main character, this girl, looking at this spectacle, was very surprised and immediately wondered if it was really so effective. The guy was 100% confident in the medicine he brought. He justified his point of view in front of this girl by saying that his ancestor was a court doctor, which reinforces his words. While these two were having a very interesting time with each other, being left almost alone, we watched as some kind of car drove up to the mansion of this family, or rather, drove up to the gate. A strange blonde man who was trying to dress cool with a bouquet of flowers in his hands came out of the car and pressed the intercom and said that his name was Xu Jingwen, and he had come to meet Ji Yan. The same worker of this mansion who let our main character inside also let this strange blonde guy in who kept trying to look a little cool. Once on the territory of the mansion and taking off his sunglasses, he declared to himself that he had come. Although he was addressing Ji Yan, he continued to confidently move towards the mansion. After a couple of dozen or maybe hundreds of steps, the mansion, after all, this big blonde man with a not very cool hairstyle, finally reached the entrance to the mansion itself. He began to slowly open the door. But when he went inside, he found the girl he came to, who communicated very well with our main character, who at that moment was telling her some school stories. This blonde froze with a bouquet of roses standing behind these two. He wondered why his beautiful Ji-Yan would be evicted sitting next to some incomprehensible trash and a complete loser. The blonde decided to end this absurdity. He still decided to approach the girl from behind, interrupting her cheerful conversation by approaching the girl and saying that he had come to her. The girl was surprised. This blonde decided that he was a real alpha male. He hugged this girl from behind. He reminded her that she was still sick, so he asked her why she wasn't resting now. But judging by Ji-Yan's reaction, just like us, she doesn't like this garbage. Because a couple of moments after the guy hugged her, the girl knocked her hand away, thereby stopping this ridge. And this was not the only thing this girl did. After she fought off this blonde's hand, she shouted at him to immediately leave her with this screenshot. The guy, to put it mildly, was not very happy with this reaction from the girl he came to, which is why he began to use his 65 IQ to figure out how to turn this situation around. After a couple of moments, a brilliant idea finally came to his two brains on how to eliminate a really tough guy. He put his hand on the shoulder of our main character and called him Buddy. He apologized to him, but reminded him that the doctor said that Ji-Yan needed more rest, which is why he led to the fact that our main character should leave so that she could continue resting. This girl once again shouted at this blonde, saying that this guy is her friend, so he shouldn't worry and stop this unbearable stream of cringe and leave the screen. This guy continued to think that he was right. He brought up the argument that he and she grew up together, so of course he feels responsible. And our main character worries her, so he decided to remind. Then, for some reason, this Ji-Yan began to make excuses to our main character, telling him that this eccentric was talking complete nonsense because she only sometimes played with him when she was little. Despite this rather difficult and awkward situation, our main character still understood what was happening here. So he immediately figured out how to get out of this situation beautifully with the help of his brain. That is why Xiaowen got up from the sofa and, turning to the blonde, told him that he undoubtedly understands that he is worried about the girl's health. But there is one nuance that makes itself felt. The guy continues to tell this blonde directly that he is bothering him. It is for this reason that in order to stay with Ji-Yan, he must leave here, leaving them alone. In this incident, undoubtedly, this girl supported our main character Gigachad, telling the blonde that it was he who came first, which means it was Xiao Feng who should stay with her while he left. But this blonde continued to stand his ground. He asked the girl directly if she really thought that this loser really had so many abilities, because he was just a stupid cheater who was lucky. It was for this reason that this blonde took out his Samsung Galaxy S25 and said that right now he would call his father so that they would send 2 doctors of medical sciences here. But after a couple of moments, a cry that told the blonde there is no need interrupts all of them. From somewhere, a soldier appears in a military uniform who reports that this guy is his father's doctor and he must leave. The blonde, seeing this guy, cannot believe his eyes. He does not believe that he really returned from Langya. The guy asks the blonde if he hoped that he would not return or something like that. Feeling awkward, this blonde replied to this soldier who had just returned from the combat zone that he couldn't think wrong because they were friends and that's all. Hearing that this trash who calls himself a friend, this scarred soldier sighed, asking this guy if he really thought that he was worthy of having at least one friend. Passing by this resemblance to a person, this soldier told this blonde to just look at himself and then leave and preferably never return to this place again. The blonde, meanwhile, understood that he was in a very bad situation, and this very unexpected return of this guy actually played into his hands. He was thinking about how to get out of it once again. A couple of moments after this, the blonde decided to turn to our main hero and ask him if his name was Xiao Feng. The guy silently looked at this blonde, killing him with his gaze. Then we watched as the unexpectedly returning soldier loudly slammed the door he entered. This immediately attracted the attention of everyone at the same time, including our main character. Ji-Yan in panda pajamas immediately approached the guy, saying that this soldier would definitely take revenge, so she asked our protagonist to be as careful as possible with him. A couple of moments later, the same man with scars on his cheeks asked Ji-Yan to bring him some water, because he just wanted to talk about something with our main character. The tension was growing. In fact, this girl had no other options other than agreeing and going to fulfill this man's request, but our main character also had no options in this situation. A couple of moments later, this man in military uniform continued to walk around the Chu family mansion in military uniform. He entered one of the doors and invited our main character to come out and talk. After our main character obeyed and left him alone, this guy immediately got down to business telling Xiaofeng that his father said that he saw a ghost while in the hospital. The guy made sure that the door was really closed and, confirming, added that that monster wants to kill Ji Yan to take revenge on the Chu family. It was difficult, but he managed to find a way out of the situation. A couple of moments later, this guy started a completely different conversation. He asked our main character as directly as possible whether he needed money or something else. The guy apparently didn't understand what he was talking about. This soldier continued his speech in order to bring maximum clarity to the situation. He asked him how much money he needed in order for him to leave his sister and not appear next to her. Our main character responded to this by saying that he doesn't need anything from their family. He just wants to help people in a dangerous situation, and it doesn't matter to him whether they believe him or not. In this case, the guy who was opposite our main character folded his hands in front of him and demanded that the guy prove to him that he really doesn't need anything from their family. The guy immediately got out of the situation by telling the returning soldier that they had already placed their bets, and if he lost, he would call him his older brother. The soldier immediately agreed. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we move straight into the room of this girl named Ji Yan. And to be honest, we are standing in front of her door like some kind of maniacs. Literally a moment later, we move through the door and watch as our main character, along with her brother, are in her room while he lies calmly in his bed. After a couple of moments, our main character, standing over this girl, takes out his set of needles and warns the girl not to worry if something surprises her, because he is still next to her. Meanwhile, the older brother of this girl, who at this time is standing somewhere nearby and watching what is happening, is surprised that the girl can see something mystical and strange. After a couple of moments, our main character begins to use the devil's medicine. He takes a needle in his hand and begins to mutter something in his mind with his eyes closed, and the needle becomes filled with ice. After the guy finishes his terribly scary ritual and the needle is ready to be used, our main character sticks it straight into the girl's forehead while she is still conscious. When our main character is touched again by this girl with this needle, he is visited by his spider sense, which tells him that very soon something terrible will begin again. And so it happened. After a moment, our main character literally seemed to find himself in another space in which a huge dark spirit was moving towards him, reminding him that he had warned him. Meanwhile, the surprised older brother Ji Yan, seeing this monster, is so frightened that he drops the very medicine of our main character. He, walking back, wonders what the hell it is. Coming face to face with the monster, our main character tells him that he doesn't know what old scores he has with the Chu family, but the girl is innocent. If he wants to harm her, then he will have to deal with him. This monster is surprised at the impudence of our main character, telling him that he has nerves of steel, so it decides to kill our main character right now, and the next moment it attacks him. But judging by the mood of our main character at this moment, he is not going to retreat even for a second, which is why he tells the older brother of this girl to protect her at all costs. Meanwhile, this girl's older brother cannot believe that this guy is seriously going to fight this huge evil dark monster, because he is seeing this for the first time. But the guy does not answer this guy's stupid questions. Instead, he puts a block and waits for the attack of this monster in order to withstand it and continue this slightly unequal battle. A couple of moments later, a blow from this dark monster collides with our protagonist, a blow so powerful that it forces our protagonist to become an architect and break through a wall. Because of such a powerful attack, our main character flies off tens of meters and the battlefield is transferred outside. But this is even better, and the guy, in turn, does not get lost and stands up. The monster has already set out to kill our main hero, so it temporarily leaves the main target in the form of Ji Yan. The monster reminds the guy that he should not have disturbed him. Meanwhile, the monster continues to approach our main character. It becomes more and more powerful and takes on its powerful form in order to deal with the small schoolboy. The guy continues to maintain his canonical murderous composure. He takes out a blade to cut his finger to use the technique, and asks if this is based on the soul of corruption. But this monster does not intend to listen to the nonsense of our main guy. Instead, it continues to attack the guy in order to quickly deal with him and switch back to the main target. Meanwhile, a girl named Ji Yan and her older brother continue to watch this large-scale battle between our main character and a terribly huge shadow monster that can tear him apart. Realizing that the monster that stands before our main sin is too huge, the girl begins to try to call out to the guy so that he stops his attempts to defeat him and comes up with something else. Meanwhile, the battle continues and the monster continues to slowly walk towards our main character. She immediately informs the guy that an ordinary person cannot stand against a monster like her. But as soon as this monster showed a little attention and raised its head, she saw Xiaofeng, who, while this monster was chatting, had gained an amazing height and was already descending to win. Meanwhile, while in the sky, our main character was preparing to fire a shot that he had previously tested by shooting from his window. He shouted to the monster, "Bite it!" Immediately after this phrase, our main character made an amazing shot that was much stronger than the shot he made back in his apartment. It was about 5 times larger. In addition to the fact that this beam looked very impressive, it also inflicted simply monstrous damage on this monster. It seemed that a little more, and this monster would simply be crushed into powder by the power of the beam. Observing the power of our main character's beam, we understand that this already goes beyond all the spells we have seen, because this beam almost reaches the size of an ordinary mountain in the background. After Xiaofeng finishes using his beam, a huge curtain of dust rises, so this monster at which the attack was directed is not visible. Meanwhile, the guy descends. The smoke clears and we see that the monster can still stand on its feet. Despite the obvious damage, this monster tells the guy that with such blows, the guy will never defeat him. But the reaction to this of our main character, like all reactions to anything of our main character, is as always as cold as possible. He quietly tells the monster that in this case, he is simply trying another attack. A couple of moments later, our main character again wounds his finger in order to use the next skill. While he is in flight downwards, he is about to make the final blow. Next, we watch as the guy, pointing his palm covered in blood like ribbons at the monster, casts a spell called Immaculate Blood. The blow promises to be powerful. Continuing to descend at great speed, our main character cuts this huge monster in half. He does this all by forming a semblance of a sword with the help of his blood. But this is also not enough. That is why our main character, without stopping his attack, is going to improve its strength by applying a talisman called a green blade to his bloody blade. After the guy successfully applies a boost in the form of an amulet to his blade, he confidently advances on this monster in order to destroy it by making his last and most powerful blow to the monster. Our main character not only cuts this monster into 2 pieces with his improved bloody sword, but he also manages to land like a superhero and send this monster to hell with his words, where he belongs. A couple of moments after this, not the easiest battle of our main character ends. A girl immediately walks up behind the guy and calls him by name and comes closer and closer. After this girl in panda pajamas reaches Xiaofeng, the first thing she asks him is if he is okay. Despite his slightly tired appearance, he replies with a smile on his face that everything is fine. But the lie of our protagonist immediately comes to light. After he utters the words that everything is fine, he switches off and goes into free fall with the destination being dirt soil. Fortunately, the girl manages to catch the body of our main character, which has completely lost energy. The older brother and his younger sister simultaneously shout the name of Xiaofeng because they are in shock. After a couple of moments, our main character still manages to come to his senses, but only a couple of moments pass for us because we continue when the guy finally opens his eyes to the pronunciation of his name. After Xiaofeng finally opens his eyes, we see that he is not in the best condition, but judging by his face, he is happy. Moreover, he is lying in a comfortable crib. Meanwhile, a girl with gray long hair who has been waiting all this time for the guy to wake up is very happy that our main character has woken up. Tears are rolling in her eyes because he has finally woken up. After the guy finally comes to his senses, he slowly gets up and complains that he is very dizzy. At this time, the entire Chu family has gathered around his bed. Next, we see in front of us the father of the family, who was tasked with finding out what the grievance and sins against the Chu family are. He asks Xiaofeng what happened and why he is in this state. Our main character tells Uncle Chu not to worry. The reason for his condition is that he fought with Ying San, and during the battle he spent too much blood essence, which is why he passed out. A couple of moments after the words spoken by our main character, without waiting for the answer from the head of the Chu family, everything is interrupted by the loud rumbling of our main character's stomach, which is very hungry. At this moment, the guy becomes very awkward. He scratches his cheek and explains that during all this time he was a little hungry, so his stomach began to protest a little against his regime. However, this problem is very quickly resolved after Mr. Chu asks his maid to bring them food so that our main character can satisfy his hunger after a hard day. Immediately after this, the course of events breaks off and we continue when a whole feast begins, or just a dinner of the Chu family and our main character in the form of an honored guest. Eating a juicy ham, our main character has tears in his eyes. It seems to him that he has never eaten anything tastier than this juicy leg of divine chicken. From this moment on, our main character cannot be stopped because a monster wakes up in him and begins to eat everything that comes into his line of sight and reach, because the guy has never eaten anything like that. The surprise of Mr. Chu's daughter and his son at this moment is simply indescribable. Apparently, they had never seen such a hungry and slightly abnormal person in their lives. But after a couple of moments, the father of the family begins an important conversation. He asks the guy if he has any clues regarding Huna Santai. At that moment, he is very serious. Taking a break from eating, our main character, addressing Mr. Chu as an uncle, asks him if it is true that his ancestors lived in the northeast. He waits for the answer from the head of the family. But without waiting for an answer, our main character continues to say that Mrs. Huna Santai, who is causing them so many problems, also comes from the same place where his ancestors are from. The guy continues by asking Uncle Chu to remember if he heard any legend in childhood, after which a staring contest begins in the entire Chu family because no one can remember anything like that. But suddenly the father of the family realizes what he might be talking about, but after he continues to think about it, he begins to hope that this is not what he was thinking about right now. Flashbacks begin, and the course of events moves as much as 80 years ago to a small town located near Heijiangjia. The town is small but very cozy in appearance. But at that time, despite the cozy appearance of the city, they were very hungry. People in those times were ready to spend everything they had for one piece of food to satisfy their hunger a little. One day there was a case when a little thief snuck onto the city wall in order to steal at least something edible, but the thief was caught by Uncle Shi Yan. To say that the attitude towards the thief was cruel is to say nothing, because 3 men who were armed with strong wooden sticks beat this thief and were going to beat him to death. That's what they did, and after a local gang beat this thief who wanted to satisfy his hunger to death, they simply threw him out in the forest without any ceremony or anything. Meanwhile, Xiaofeng leaned back in his chair and finished his meal completely, leaving it completely clean, and said that he thought that this thief might have found something about Madame Huang. But the girl sitting next to our main Sin, after hearing what she heard, did not understand how this could be connected at all. She wondered whether this old woman was asking Mrs. Huang to repay the debt. The older brother of this girl, who also joins the discussion, adds that perhaps he asked Mrs. Huang to avenge his death, which is how they got into this story. Our main character, having heard all the theories from members of the Chu family, said that these were possible options. But the fact that Uncle Chu, the thief whom your father killed, could not be a person, it was something else. Hearing that the murdered thief was not a human, the brother and sister from the Chu family immediately became wary and did not understand how this could even be possible. They were surprised. Xiaofeng continued saying that, as they say, in bad times there are always evil spirits, and he suggests that the killed thief was a yellow-skinned monster, that is, an ogre. But if we take foxes and mice as an example, they don't even have anything resembling a personality or concept of it. Huhua take human form under the moon. This is how they train their ability to walk. Our main character continued his ingenious theory using critical thinking that, to be more accurate, it should be said that the thief was a puppet controlled by a yellow-skinned monster. After our main character put forward his very logical theory about the situation that the Chu family got themselves into, he was interrupted by the girl's older brother, who said that he couldn't stop thinking about something. He couldn't stop thinking about Grandma Gao, who was left behind after the death of the little thief. One day, several yellow pigs were crying at the grave, and it was definitely not just like that. It was then that this grandmother said that if someone sees an ogre or a yellow-skinned monster, he will definitely die within 3 days. But the great-grandmother really left in her youth. Having heard the addition from the father of the Chu family, our main character confirmed, saying that everything is correct. Apparently this is the revenge of the yellow-skinned people who are now pursuing them, and they need to get rid of it. Moreover, this creature is extremely vengeful and cannot just leave. The curse is passed on to descendants for 15 generations, and Ji Yan is in the 4th generation. Having come to this conclusion, the father of the family realized that due to the fact that his daughter was in the 4th generation, the orc would not just let her go. He asked the main character if he could somehow protect his daughter. The elder brother continued his father's request. Standing behind his sister, he added on his own, telling our main character that he prays that he protect his sister from the orc, because she is only 17 years old. Despite our main character's own desire to protect this girl, he answered honestly that he didn't know yet, and he needed to understand this situation even better before saying anything. Next, Xiaofeng turned to Uncle Chu and told him that for now he was going home, and they shouldn't worry for now, because he would definitely find a way to defeat the vengeful yellow-skinned spirit. The father of the Chu family, bowing his head down, thanked our main character, telling him that the life of his daughter is entirely in his hands, and only he can save her. A couple of moments after our main character headed out, the father of the Chu family asked his maid to take our main character home. She agreed. The course of events is once again interrupted, and we once again continue when we are transported to the house of our main character. but this time we look at it from a different angle. Finally renewed. Meanwhile, our main character sits inside his apartment at his desk, and looking at the phone that is right in front of him, tries to summon the very fairy that is in his phone. After a couple of moments, the spirit of the fool that is in our main character's phone responds to the call of our main character. She asks the guy why he is so excited again. Our main character doesn't stand on ceremony with the fairy on his phone and immediately tells her that he needs any magical weapon he can afford to exorcise demons. After this girl hears about demons, she is surprised, and his assistant is very scared, judging by her tale. Ling tells the guy that demons are very cute and asks why he doesn't want to deal with them. But as soon as our main character remembers the vengeful spirit of this old woman, everything sweet immediately leaves his head, and he has an increased desire to destroy this old she-devil. With tears in his eyes, the guy asks a fairy named Ling if she really thinks that all existing monsters are as cute as her, because this old orc woman is truly evil in the flesh. When our main character called a fairy named Ling cute, we immediately realized that we were dealing with a tsundere. She begins to ask the guy if he really just called her cute. Our main character continues to return the conversation to a serious direction. He asks Sister Ling to get together and find him a weapon with which he can expel the demon. It should also not harm mortals. After the spirit of a fox named Ling hears that the guy cares about mortals, she is very surprised and then asks our main character if he is a mortal. Apparently she is surprised. The guy is no less surprised because he never hid that he is an ordinary mortal. He answers the spirit of the fox, Ling in his phone, that he is a mortal. He asks what's wrong with that. Having heard the answer in the middle, the fox replies that in this case it is not at all surprising that he is so poor. Listening to this, the guy asks the question whether it is possible to talk about such things so indifferently. However, after a couple of moments, this girl snaps her fingers to search on Taobao according to our protagonist's request. As always, she tries to find the best. After a couple of moments, a demon-destroying weapon called Eternal Flame appears in front of the guy, a pale flame from hell that destroys evil spirits and things, can cleanse karma and the sins of generations. This girl continues saying that the Eternal Flame is the most suitable weapon in this situation. Then the guy has a choice of whether to buy it for 300 soul stones. The guy thinks about it after seeing the price tag. Seeing that our main character stops after he sees the price tag, she tells him that for such a weapon, 300 soul stones are mere pennies and can hardly be called money at all. But considering that our main character is incredibly poor, she still decides to ask Xiao Feng if he really doesn't even have a measly 200 soul stones to purchase the best remedy. Despite the awkwardness of our analog of the hero, he turns his eyes somewhere to the right and begins to scratch his cheek. He slowly answers the girl that he is collecting some currency and will return. Meanwhile, on this poor note, the course of events ends again and we move back to the elite mansion where a rich family with the surname Chu lives, who are still having problems. Moving through the territory of an elite mansion, we watch our main character who at such a late hour is busy laying out his seals written in blood on the trees. Having placed another seal on the next tree trunk, our main character sighs because he is really tired after installing a large number of seals on tree trunks. Looking at the moon, which is fully revealed, our main character understands that today at 3 o'clock in the morning, Huang, in the form of a vengeful ogre spirit, will come for Jian's life, so he is here with her. However, despite the general deplorability of the whole situation, our main character is not very worried because during this time, he managed to prepare a big surprise for this tormenting spirit, which he uses. Looking at Qi Yuan, who today will be subjected to a deadly hunt, our main character understands that her father really values her very much because he gave him 3 million without hesitation. After a couple of moments, Uncle Chu himself approaches our main character and asks the guy if he is ready for defense. The guy replies that he has just finished and everything is ready. Looking at the territory from above, we understand that our main character has done just a colossal job. All with the help of his seals, he created a huge barrier. With such preparation, he can cope. Meanwhile, Jian's father once again slowly approaches our main character to put his hand on his shoulder and remind him that Jian's life is only in his hands. But despite the seriousness of the events that will happen very soon, our main character keeps a smile on his face because he did everything possible to overcome the vengeful spirit. Xiao Feng is so confident in his abilities thanks to the surprise he prepared and the preparation for the fight that he gives his word to the girl's father that he will definitely not let him down that night. A couple of moments later, the conversation between Xiao Feng and Ji Yong's father himself is interrupted by the girl herself, who suddenly approaches the guy from behind, addressing him by name. Despite the fact that on this night it is decided whether this girl will continue to live at all, she is quite calm. On the contrary, she asks our main character to be careful. A couple of moments after this, they hear the already familiar voice of that same vengeful spirit, which reports that these fools in vain did not listen to her and appeared in front of her again. After our Galvi hero is finally convinced that the vengeful spirit has come for the girl and the hour of battle has come, he immediately tells her to immediately go to Uncle Chu. While the girl, according to the order of our main character, runs to her father, the guy stands in full readiness to fight. A vengeful spirit warns that there is no other choice, because he will go to hell. Next, a huge spontaneous tornado begins to spin above the head of our main character, with the help of which a vengeful spirit plans to quickly get rid of our main character, who is preventing revenge. Meanwhile, this huge elemental tornado continues to gain its power and becomes larger and larger. After a while, something will appear from it, and the most important battle will begin. Looking closely at that spontaneous tornado, we understand that inside is that same orc, or rather her vengeful spirit. She tells the guy since he wants to protect this girl so much. In this case, she will provide him with this opportunity, but she warns him in advance so that he does not blame him later if he loses shamefully. Meanwhile, the orc continues to appear in her guise. Our protagonist's confidence continues to be at the level of a gigachad. He grins and tells this old hag that they have yet to find out which of them will go to hell in this battle. Meanwhile, the Chu family is in the bushes, and watching what is happening at a safe distance, the girl's older brother wonders if the guy can even defeat her. The girl says that they should believe in him. After our main character gives his confident speech between this confrontation, the hag answers him that his words are too loud, and he is unlikely to be able to implement anything. After a couple of moments, this orc hag, still in the sky, calls down 3 huge monsters so that they deal with our main character. She is going to send him to hell first. But our main character is not caught off guard by such a cheap trick. He begins to take a strange position and begins to use some strange spell that he had already prepared before the fight. After the guy activates one of the things that he prepared under his feet and also under the feet of the monsters, a huge seal in the form of yin and yang begins to glow. It covers all the monsters. After this withered, terrible-looking orc sees that our main character has really prepared thoroughly for the battle, she, calling him Varnish, says that after all, he is not so bad. But even despite Xiaofeng's training, she orders her children to attack this guy who, for her monsters, is the size of an ant and whom they can easily crush. But the aces up our protagonist's sleeve don't intend to end with the folding of the seal, just as Satoru Goju guy activates the 3rd spell that he prepared called Valley of Ghosts. As soon as our main character uttered these words and used the required seal, the Kato moved to the very seals that he needed to place in the trees around the battlefield. Immediately after this, just a huge number of different blue lanterns appear above the head of the vengeful spirit of flaws, which are already starting to frighten simply by their quantity without knowing the functionality. But judging by the old woman's face, she immediately understood what it was. At first, she didn't believe her eyes, but then she screamed with all her might to all her summoned creatures so that they did not move from their place. But it was already too late, because one of the monsters that was summoned by this old woman was already a couple of centimeters away in order to inflict a colossally strong blow on our main character. The guy, realizing that his trap has worked and the creatures that are within the seal are still moving, he takes advantage of the moment by activating 12 star warriors, calling them to come into the light. Immediately after the guy casts his spell and thanks to the fulfilled condition, 11 seals appear around the seal he made that summon star warriors. Next, we watch the total destruction of the children of this old woman by these cool gaga children of star warriors who crush these huge summoned creatures like ants. Watching the sheer chaos that our main character created simply with the help of preparation, this orc hag wonders, looking at all this chaos, who the hell he is anyway. Meanwhile, our main character stands in a cool pose against the backdrop of a huge light warrior who holds a huge shield, who introduces himself as Xiaofeng, who is a high school student in the city of Jiangxiaoqing. In response to this old hag points her staff at our main character and tells the guy that she really underestimated him. But he is still just a pathetic bug in her path that she will demolish. However, our main character interrupts this old woman by saying that this is actually a spell and not just some kind of decoration to create a cool atmosphere for the final battle. While the light warriors are preparing to attack this hag from all sides, the guy continues to say that the 11 star warriors that he recently summoned are not just decoration, but real warriors. After this old hag who thought she was omnipotent, but the guy drove her into a corner with the help of his high combat intelligence, she became very tense and told the guy that he was too arrogant. Scattering the light warriors who had just recently surrounded her, this old hag, she shouted that such weak attacks as the attacks of these pathetic warriors would never affect her. Our main character is surprised after he sees this. Looking at this, He is surprised that the 11 light warriors he had just summoned were destroyed by just one attack from this hag. This girl begins to mock the 11 light warriors who were summoned by our main character. She asks what now he will summon from their remains, which she is using right now. The orc continues to prepare the attack, telling the guy that he cannot resist her. Huna Santai, with his current strength, defeating her is just a stupid dream of a fool that is unattainable. And today he will not be able to protect either himself or the girl, because today she intends to end both our main character and the girl whom he so diligently protects. Having completed her pathetic phrase, she directed her huge attack consisting of evil spirits at our main character and members of the Chu family who were at that time in the bushes nearby. But when all three members of the Chu family saw that a huge number of powerful projectiles were approaching them, they realized that they had reacted too late, and now they were most likely finished. Despite the hopeless situation, these two are trying to do at least something to protect the girl. The father of this girl and her older brother are trying to cover her with their body in the hope that it will help. But after a couple of moments, our main character finds himself in front of the magic projectiles, who manages to appear here at the last moment to cast his spell, which he has not yet used. Immediately after casting the spell, our main character appears in his hand with a rather large shield that should hold back this attack in order to protect the entire Chu family. Fortunately, the power of this shield turns out to be enough to dispel even the powerful attack of this vengeful spirit. Thanks to the guy, the entire Chu family does not receive any damage. The support group of our main character, who is in the bushes, begins to support him and praise him for the fact that this move worked just fine, and he saved his family with his unexpected shield. Only Chin Yan at this moment was not afraid for a second, because apparently she was the only one of them who was confident in the strength and speed of our protagonist, so she was not worried. A couple of moments later, another seal appeared in the hands of our protagonist, which surrounded him with golden energy. The spell was accompanied by a request addressed to the god of the ether. After our main character summoned the god of the ether using the seal that he had already prepared, his hand began to be absorbed by a crushing and powerful force. A couple of moments later, we see in front of us the damned Susanoo from Naruto, and to be serious, the god of the ether appeared at the request of our main character more than ever at the right time, and the battle went in his favor. This old hag simply could not believe her eyes. Most likely, she did not expect that in today's battle, she would have to face the god of the ether himself, who is not so easy to call for help. Next, we watch as this pretentious god of the ether grabs the pitiful 3 tentacles of the evil energy of this Kraga, and squeezing, fries them to a high degree of roasting, and his hunter's eyes glow red. Thanks to the mighty power of fire, this god of ether easily continues to set these tentacles on fire, and thus the god of ether, with his most simple attack, launches a whole stream of flame towards this hag. The hag orc understands that this time she is really in a deplorable state, because in just a couple of seconds this hellish flame of the god of ether will reach her, and she will have a hard time. After a couple of moments, the flames of the god of ether, summoned by our main sin, still reach this hag and begin to torture him with hellish fire. She actually burns, taking damage. Looking at this unusual version of fireworks, our main character says that this is what the flames from hell should look like. The guy noticed that the flames were not going to recede. He concluded that they would not disappear while she was alive. Even after this seemingly crushing attack, this hag manages to survive because after the smoke from the fire clears, we see that this hag was saved by forming a cocoon. A couple of moments later, this already annoying hag with her monotonous attacks again, sending a whole squad of evil spirits that are homing to our squad. But this time the attack was not directed at the Chu family or our main character. This old woman decided to attack the god of ether, and the guy in turn ordered the god of ether to attack back. A couple of moments after this, the god of ether took his fighting stance in order to repel the attack that was coming at him. He also had a huge fire glaive summoned by him. Immediately after preparing for the collision, the god of ether soared into the sky in order to teach this old hag a lesson that she would remember for a long time. He began to prepare to swing. A couple of moments after the enemy's attack reached the god of ether, we understand that he was able to easily repel this attack. Judging by the state of this warrior, everything is more than fine with him. Meanwhile, for the god of the ether, there is simply an excellent opportunity to carry out a direct attack head-on on an enemy who at this time is in no way protected from a direct collision. Our main character, looking at this situation, also understands that now seems like the right time to slam another trap of his, which was prepared by him even before the start of this battle. A couple of moments after this, the god of ether pointed his fiery spear directly at this hag in order to make a direct attack to end this fight with the annoying hag. This vengeful spirit continued to shower everything around with these annoying purple attacks that looked like snakes. She again screamed at the guy not to be so confident. This time it was impossible for the ether god not to be damaged by this attack, because this time, these purple snake-shaped attacks reached the ether god, piercing him in different parts of his body. After this hag saw that she managed to easily pierce this god of ether with her attacks, whom she was wary of, she realized that his strength was not as great as he thought just recently. But judging by the confident appearance of our main character, it should be assumed that our main character had already calculated this move. Was he really the real Light Yagami from the Death Note of this title? And so it was. After a couple of moments, a flame suddenly appeared right in front of the face of this annoying creature. She could not believe her eyes, because the god of the ether was already struck by her attacks. A couple of moments later, she saw before her eyes how from the fire that appeared in front of her, a fiery spear of the god of ether appeared and flew straight at her. The old woman understood that if she failed to block this attack, she would receive a large amount of damage, which is why she began to use a technique called Pale Muscle Shadow to defend herself. But after this fiery computer given by the god of ether hit this old woman, a huge explosion was heard, due to which it was not clear whether this attack of the god of ether brought any result. After the smoke from the attack cleared, we saw again this damned grandmother who, calling the guy a nasty boy, told him that his god of the ether had just been destroyed by her. She asked if he had any more tricks. No one pulled this vengeful spirit in the form of a nasty grandmother by the tongue, because as soon as she asked the guy if he had any other tricks that he left for later, she noticed something strange. A couple of moments after this hag decided to look down, she saw that our main character still managed to catch her in a trap, because now she was imprisoned in 4 red chains. Looking down at the surface of the soil, we saw that there was some strange purple light on the ground that continued to actively move somewhere under someone's guidance. The guy added that of course this is a real yellow-skinned embryo with a 1,000-year history, and it took our main character a whole huge amount of wasted time to pull this off. Next, the guy looked at the hag, who this time was definitely in a trap. He told her that this time it was all over because there was no point in him continuing this fight any further. He won. A couple of moments after this phrase, which was uttered by our main character, these chains light up with a violet flame that passed to this old woman and mercilessly fried her. Our main character, like any other main character, did not look at how one of his strongest enemies died. Instead, he turned around because tough guys don't look at the explosion. After the fire dissipated, the huge true body of this old hag fell to the ground. This time it was completely helpless, and our main character, thanks to his 200 IQ, won a cool ride. Mr. Chu, who at that moment was sitting in the bushes with his family, could not believe his eyes. He could not accept the fact that some schoolboy had defeated the ancient spirit. As before, the only one who believed in our main character was the very girl for whom this battle was fought. She was the very first to emerge from the bushes and go to meet our main character, calling his name. The first question she asked our main character after the most important victory for her was whether he was okay. The guy did not immediately answer because silence followed again. Our main character, looking at the waifu he likes, replied that now everything is fine and he killed this monster. Now from now on, nothing threatens her life anymore. The girl couldn't believe these words. She asked our main character if, in other words, it was really all over, and this hag would no longer come to her to kill her. Xiaofeng, placing his hand on this girl's shoulder, replied that this is so, and this vengeful spirit will really not come for her anymore, because just recently he killed him. After the girl realized that now, thanks to our main character, she was truly safe and a vengeful spirit would no longer come to her, she rushed into the arms of our main character. Immediately after the girl herself came to our main character filled with joy, her older brother and her father came up behind her. The brother said that he really did not let them down, and the father praised his excellent work. After a couple of moments, this girl became terribly embarrassed, because she realized that she had thrown herself into the arms of our main character, while behind her were her own father and her older brother. But despite the awkwardness that she felt, she thanked our protagonist for the fact that he had just literally saved her life by winning an incredibly difficult battle. The canonical reaction of our main character was not long in coming. The guy simply awkwardly scratched his cheek and answered as simply as possible. He was happy to help them, as he said,